Good morning. This is meteorologist Quincy Vagel with your early morning chase briefing for June 23rd, 2019. Just a heads up, this is going to be very quick, and if you're watching this after the sun has come up on Sunday, it may be outdated. But the setup for Sunday is fairly unusual for late June when you talk about severe weather targeting the southern plains. This is a setup you'd expect to see in mid to late May, not late June. And our 500 millibar heights and anomalies, the darker blues are your more negative anomalies. And not only is there no death ridge across the plains, but even the southeast ridge is shunted down to the Gulf Coast. Fairly unusual for late June. And if you look at your 567 decameter height contour coming through Nebraska, just for a little bit of an example, at North Platte, if they do have a 500 millibar height as low as 567 decameters Sunday evening, that would be basically near record levels for such a low height at this point in the year. If we look at our analogs, and this is very unusual, but 14 out of the top 15 analogs are all from May, or basically the first 2 weeks or first few weeks of June. It is very unusual to see a setup like this so late in the season, and because of that, the analog data suggests a heightened threat for severe weather across the southern plains. But that map is not, this is not your SPC forecast, this is just a generic analog. But our 500 millibar heights, you see the shortwave coming through the central and southern plains, a relatively compact jet, but it's strong enough that you'll have some favorable shear. But most of the deep layer shear will be displaced north and west of a composite cold front and convective system. That's important because well, first off, you're not going to get shear that goes much farther south and east than this. But thankfully, because of this, the severe weather threat will be mainly damaging winds, and I'll explain why. If we look at the forecast from the HRRR around 18Z, a surface low across the West Texas, South Plains vicinity, a quasi-stationary front to about the Red River, and then you have a composite cold front convective system from southern and eastern Oklahoma toward the Ozarks. And the forecast models are all in fairly good agreement. They all show a convective system developing in the panhandles overnight, which is what's happening right now, and they all show this developing into an extensive convective system throughout the morning, and then this convective system should maintain itself and then potentially re-intensify by mid to late afternoon across the Red River Valley toward eastern Oklahoma, and then parts of Arkansas and then surrounding areas around that. But the way that this convective system evolves will be very important. I think for the most part, the threat will be damaging winds with this system. It's going to outrun the better shear. There could be some hail, and you can't rule out a couple of QLCS tornadoes as well. I don't really think we're going to see any warm sector supercells because of the lack of shear. But one area that does get a little bit interesting is back toward the triple point, back toward a dry line bulge and near the surface low from West Texas toward Northwest Texas. That is where you may have enough overlap of favorable shear and favorable instability on the southwest flank of the convective system for a few supercells by mid to late afternoon. So for storm chasing prospects, that's probably going to be the main area to target. But again, it depends on how the convective system evolves. It could be more extensive than forecast, or it could break down, but the model agreement is pretty consistent. So just to recap, the main threat across most of the area will be damaging winds with a convective system, MCS. I don't think we're going to have a derecho, as the system should outrun more favorable shear, but we'll have to kind of watch to see how that evolves. Mainly damaging winds, potentially some hail. The tornado threat should be relatively limited, but you can't rule out a few tornadoes. If there's a slightly higher risk for tornadoes, it would be with any discrete supercells that develop on the southwest flank of the convective system, farther west toward northwest Texas, and in that vicinity for potentially a few supercells. And I kind of did breeze through, but there's also a threat for some storms in a post-frontal regime or even along an inverted trough from eastern Colorado toward the central high plains and potentially the panhandle region. Could have a few storms, but as has been the case the last couple of days, relatively limited moisture and not much instability, which is, again, another unusual setup for late June, but that's why I'm not overly focused on that area. So thanks for watching. If you have any feedback, let me know, and we'll talk to you soon.